All you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christys, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Our top stories tonight. Boris Johnson has urged Israel's allies to stay the course in their support for Israel in its war against Hamas. The former Prime Minister toured some of the communities attacked by terrorists on the 7th of October. In an exclusive interview with our security editor Mark White, he said he was horrified by what he saw and he called on the international community to remember those events.
Look at what happened. Remember, this was sadism. This was an orgy of brutality and torture against innocent people. People were chased around the rooms in their houses and shot. Now, there's a difference between that and what the Israeli soldiers are now trying to do in Gaza. So your point, Mark, about what the international community needs to remember is the difference between what Israel experienced, the terrorist attack, and what they're trying to do now. What they're trying to do now is make sure that never happens again.
We can see more on that exclusive interview with Boris Johnson tomorrow from breakfast at 6 and throughout the day on GB News as well. Tel Aviv has been hit by a second major rocket barrage in just 2 hours this evening. Sirens sounded across the city as Iron Dome missile defence systems lit up the night sky. The first attack occurred just minutes after the former Prime Minister Boris Johnson visited an aid distribution centre in central Tel Aviv. There are no reports yet of any impacts or injuries. The Rafah crossing did not reopen today, despite Foreign Office hopes that more Britons could escape from Gaza. Earlier, First Minister Humza Yousaf posted a photo showing his in-laws. They've arrived back in Scotland after being trapped in the Strip for more than 3 weeks. Egypt decided to suspend evacuations following a deadly attack on an ambulance. The Met Police say 6 people have now been charged after 29 arrests at pro-Palestine protests in central London. It comes as the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary expressed their concerns about further demonstrations during Armistice Day. Met Police Commissioner Sir Mark Rowley has promised to take a robust approach to ensure commemorative events are not undermined. And riot police are trying to control around 100 young people in the Niddry area of Edinburgh, with fireworks being thrown directly at officers. Police Scotland have confirmed that they've also been subjected to attacks from petrol bombs. Buses have been cancelled, roads closed. The public is being asked to avoid that area. OK, this is GB News across the UK on TV, in your car, on digital radio and on your smart speaker by saying play GB News. Now it's time for our headliners.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, taking you through Monday's top stories for the next hour with the help of Paul Cox and the hindrance of Lewis Schaefer, which I actually had planned as my intro, but he was being even worse than normal, trying to take a selfie when we've started the show. That's incredible. We're doing a story about selfies later, which which will resonate. How are you doing, Paul? I'm not even speaking.
Yeah, I'm good, Nick. I mean, it's all taken me by surprise. This is even by your standards. Lewis, this is amazing. I'm good, Nick. How are you?
I'm well, and people encourage this behaviour on Twitter. That's what bothers me. They'll be like, I love when Lewis does his antics, because they don't have to work it. You know?
I don't consider it antics. I just think we should be, I mean, this is...
Well, someone just said to me, why is the guest not sitting down? And I said, because it's Lewis. And that sums it up, really, doesn't it? All right, we'll get into that in a minute, but let's have a quick look at Monday's front pages. So, the Daily Mail has pressure on Tories over serial rapist cover-up. We're doing that in a minute. The Telegraph, Met Chief urged to ban armistice protest. The Express, Brexit trade freedom boost for UK economy. The Guardian, Israeli strikes on Gaza intensify as violence on Lebanon border flares. The Eye, UK's National Security Council not prepared for heightened terror threat. And the Daily Star, here we blow again, which I assume is about weather. And those were the front pages. So what have we got on the Express, Paul?
Well, we've actually got a good news story, I think. A Brexit trade freedom boost for UK economy. So this is Kemi back and today she blasts the Brexit doomsters, or doommongers as it says in here, after a report shows leaving the EU has boosted UK trade. And it gives some statistics, actually, and this is taking place between 2019 and 2022. And it says that goods exports rose from by 13.5% to EU countries and by 14.3% to non-EU countries. And of course, that 14.3%, a large amount of that wouldn't have been possible without Brexit. So on the surface, this is good news. Now, I say on the surface because there will be lots of doomsters out there who simply won't allow a good news Brexit story. It's like it's impossible to them. However, the statistics don't lie on this occasion, I don't think.
Yeah, well, there was also that thing where they thought we were going to be in recession, then we actually weren't, and Germany were, which was total bants. But then again, is this just Kemi's job to say this kind of thing? What do you think, Lewis?
Well, we don't know. I mean, you say it wouldn't have happened unless we don't know how much it could have been if Brexit didn't happen. How much our imports or exports.
Oh, you're like the kind of, we could have locked down earlier crowd. You're like, if we'd have not done Brexit, it could have been even better.
Yeah, well, you don't know. You don't know. We don't know anything. And
well, that's true of us three, yeah.
Yeah.
You stopped short then, didn't you?
Yeah.
You were going to say, I don't know anything. You thought, you'd introduce yourself into that. And you're right. I mean, it's not, of course, it's the counter-argument to this. I just think in a time where every single front page is absolutely harrowing, even if this is completely made up, I'll take it as a good news story.
Yeah, at least it's not a bad news story. It's not saying it's down by 14%, and then you'd have to hear the yapping from the other side saying how bad things are because of Brexit.
But the argument against your point, Lewis, of course, is that Germany has been struggling, and pretty much all of Europe. So it's not like the EU's been crushing it without us.
Yeah, but Germany has been struggling because of its gas situation, where they actually sacrificed themselves for the Ukrainian people, for Europe. So you have to give those Germans credit for doing what they did. So you're not comparing like to like.
No, but now it looks like Germany, which is always praised for its manufacturing, maybe in a sense over-reliant on manufacturing because of the problems with Russia and over-reliance on Russian gas and so on.
It goes back beyond the Ukraine. Well, they started closing down the coal mines in Germany a long time ago, in some cases before we did. And we all seem to sacrifice our fuel sovereignty for this greater Team World business.
Yeah.
And it's backfired entirely. I don't say too much on that because we're going to say a bit more about that later.
And it's good that the EU's not doing too well. It's kind of like your ex isn't doing that well. It's kind of quite nice.
Yeah.
Let's move on and do the Guardian then, Lewis.
Oh, happy news. Happy news. Israeli strikes on Gaza intensify as violence on Lebanon border flares. And, you forget that Israel is surrounded by people who don't like them. And it's not just in Gaza. And this is Hezbollah, which is kind of like Hamas, but fewer letters, I think. Hamas, Hezbollah. And a rocket landed in northern Israel and killed an Israeli. And there's been rocket attacks that have been going on in Tel Aviv right now as we speak. I mean, you got to give the Palestinians credit for being able to do this in the midst of this onslaught.
Well, so Israel had a strike, and then Hezbollah now hitting back on the border cities. And it just depends how far. I mean, how far Iran going to go? That's the big question, I think.
Iran?
Yeah.
Yeah, OK.
And Hezbollah, I mean, how far are they going to go?
Well, of course, yeah. Same thing. Exactly, I agree with you, Nick. Well, they're a sneaky bunch. You know, they're a wily old bunch, and I can see a lot of this. I can see a lot of this being deliberate. You know, they're strategically placing their headquarters under a hospital. I mean, absolute bants, as you would say. But and it wouldn't surprise me if they put strategic positions on borders with Lebanon as well, because of course, bombs dropping near Lebanon, another sovereign country, is big news, particularly for the pro-Palestinian gang.
Yeah, my concern is that, I mean, I don't know how you feel, Lewis. Israel sort of, obviously there's the horrific actual fighting, and then there's the kind of PR battle. And it seems to me like Israel had sympathy following October 7th, of course, but then kind of lost it to some degree, whether fairly or unfairly. And maybe because the world has moved from a kind of neoliberal position to this more kind of leftist decolonization thing, team world, as you would call it.
Yeah.
Are they losing the PR battle?
No.
Okay.
And because I've thought about this, and I'm probably wrong, because initially when this happened, I said Israel shouldn't be doing this. But basically, the positions have switched. Is the Palestinians have learned from the Jews how to be victims. That's why they're always saying, all the children have been killed, all the people have been killed. We are the victims. The head guys are going around saying we're the victims, and the Jews are thinking us like saying we're victims hasn't worked for us, and we're going to take on the attitude of a dominant people. And so I'm gonna hope. I'm not gonna hope. I'm saying Israel might be right that the Israelis, that the Jews who are living there are going to out crazy Palestinian terrorists.
OK. I'm still not totally sure which side you're falling on, but yeah, I think it is a shame. I personally think it's a shame. I'm not quite sure this is your exact point, but I think it's a shame. Unfortunately, the way you can... what's being used against Israel is the idea that Palestine are always the victim, and you just have to say Israel's the occupier. It's quite a simplistic narrative.
It's like what's his name said? I forget who it was who said, one of the Israeli presidents. He said, I think it's Netanyahu who said it years and years ago. He said, we live in a tough neighbourhood.
It's definitely a tough neighbourhood.
Yeah,
I think we should all agree on that.
neighbourhood.
OK. All right, well, on that, let's have a look at the eye poll.
Yeah, the eye have gone with UK's National Security Council not prepared for heightened terror threat. Quelle surprise. Anti-terror body, which has been meeting in recent weeks to brief ministers on rising threats due to Israel-Gaza conflict, is under-prepared to deal with the workload. And they're saying this, they being 5 serving and ex-serving ex-intelligence sources, say that we're under-resourced and there's been disruption because of the revolving door in the Prime Minister's office.
Yeah.
And of course, that's left us in this kind of reactionary position. I mean, of course, we're not ready and it's too much. No one's ever ready for this stuff. But I think half the problem is the system, the process, all relies on politicians and civil servants. If you told me MI5, for instance, or the Navy or the Army were the people that would be leading on this, I'd feel a lot more relaxed. But when you introduce the emotion and the politics of civil servants and whatever colour politician it is, I think you're always going to be in the position where you're underprepared. It's the same with COVID or any big situation. You're totally relying on human behaviour. Whereas I think with the systems that are built into our Royal Navy and the armed services, we've got a lot of preparedness there that would help us with any of this stuff.
OK. Well, I always sympathise with anyone in charge of this kind of thing because you hear these rumours there are sort of 20,000 plus Islamic extremists being watched at all times. You just think about it's almost impossible. And now with these extra things going on, and they're also blaming the so-called revolving door of prime ministers. I mean, it won't have helped, will it?
No, but you know what? It has nothing to do with the Prime Minister's office. It goes to the core of this country. This country has had 70 years or more of peace after World War II, and we've been lulled into this false thing that everything's all right, kumbaya, the world government, everybody's okay, let everybody come in, let the people come in. And so the country is totally... The people, it's not just the structures, the military. Everybody's unprepared in this place.
Yeah, and all of Europe,
we should be scared to death right now what's happened.
Yeah.
And it's you know, if Israel sort of let that its guard, you could understand what position we as English people.
Yeah, because and do you blame? Are you saying that immigration massively going up post about 1997, or is that kind of thing? We've been too complacent.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, as an immigrant and coming from a country of immigrants, you know, you shouldn't let people into the country that hate your guts.
Sleep well, everybody. Sleep well.
People should not sleep well. We are in a heightened, we're in a bad place.
Yeah, well, let's line it up then with the cover of the Daily Star, Lewis. Is that any better?
It is good news, is that we have weather and we can take our mind off of Israel, basically. This is happy times. But it says 470-mile-per-hour storms to batter Britain. Here we blow again. That's that song, fantastic song. Who sang that song? Dolly Parton. Here we go again. And that's a Dolly Parton song. You probably don't know.
I'm not sure it's a reference to that necessarily.
Anyway, 70-mile-per-hour storms in America. Even in New York, people would laugh at that number.
Small breeze.
Small breeze.
I mean, anyone would think it was autumn, Nick.
Yeah.
You're right. Weather. All right. Well, there it is. That's it for part one. But coming up, Armistice Day tensions build. Why Keir Starmer is weak, and should Suella spend some time with the homeless? See you in 2 minutes.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like? I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6 is Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, still here with Paul Cox and Lewis Schaefer, MP. There he is. I've just given you a random title.
MP.
Yeah, why not? That would be
mental person.
And MD. And MD.
Yes, of course, you are a doctor. Let's do the Daily Mail and further tension regarding the potential Armistice Day march, Paul.
Yes. So ministers warn pro-Palestine march on Armistice Day could trigger violence and a wave of anti-Semitism as they up pressure on police to cancel Gaza event in London and home. Now, let's just say it up. I mean, I don't think it's a good idea, but it's going to happen. It should happen. We have the right to protest. You know, it creates a right paradox for all of us here because, you know, we're all free speech advocates. Some of us are even free speech absolutists. So it would be kind of ironic if we were to counter this in some way. So if it is going to go ahead, I mean, yeah, I'll leave that up for debate, to be honest. I do believe it would be ironic, but so therefore it is going to happen. So I think the best thing we can do is not react. I mean, I said this the other night. A lot of people that could react to this and feel passionate about this, and believe me, I do too, are watching this channel and probably watching this channel now. If you are going onto the streets of London next weekend with the sole aim of reacting to people walking past the cenotaph in some way, then we are going to lose the battle. We are going to lose the battle. The best thing that we can do is let it happen. Now, that could mean damage to the cenotaph, and I don't actually think it will go that far. But let's say it does, that would expose the other side.
Are you talking about sort of Pearl Harbor approach?
I just think that, do you know what? If we go, what's the worst thing going to happen here? Chaps covered in the Union Jack fighting pro-Palestinian protesters. Yeah. That is the absolute worst thing that can happen. So I think we step back and we let it happen. I know that's difficult. I know it's difficult in this time, but I think that's the only way to win.
I agree, because they'll be framed as the enemy. We already saw the other day they were being told off for having flags on the barriers. You're not allowed to have your flag on the barrier. And then they said, well, what about all the people with the Palestinian flags? They said, well, there's far too many of them. Like, OK, the police actually admitted that, or it was the Met, or one of these police groups. So, but I've got a different point to yours. You're saying we have to allow it for free speech, but actually the EDL we're going to have a march a while ago, and the Met Police Commissioner appealed to the Home Office and said, we don't want this to go ahead, and they shut it down. Yeah. So why can't the Met Police do the exact same thing here? I mean, because EDL are treated completely differently to this march, but why should they be? So I'm not sure anymore we can have... There may be a limit to free speech, and it may be people who just openly want to kill everyone in our country. I don't know. What do you think, Lewis?
I don't agree with you, because I think I am a free speech absolutist, and if these people want to protest, they should be allowed to protest. They don't have to protest in front of the cenotaph on the holiest day of the year for people to set. And the cenotaph.
What if they do?
What if they do? They should be. If they say they're going to, that the roads should be blocked off to prevent them from doing it, and then they should be arrested.
I mean, we're all aware that they have said the route will not go past the cenotaph. We're all aware of that. I believe there will be separatist groups that will antagonise. And I'll say it, and I'll keep saying it, don't take the bait.
Can I change my mind and agree with Paul?
OK. I think the two might not be mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I think, you know, you let people... Personally, I think you let them do what they want to do. And I think people are seeing it. From what I can tell, enough people are seeing it. This is like the Pearl Harbor moment.
It's going to be the most protected monument in London next weekend. So I don't think we have to worry about it getting damaged.
I'm wondering these days, I have to say, maybe, I mean, I'm meant to be like a free speech absolutist, but I'm wondering these days if free speech depends on certain shared cultural assumptions that we just don't have anymore and that we just couldn't have predicted.
Well, that's called decency and tolerance, and that went in about 98, I think.
Yeah, we don't have it anymore, so we're not equipped, as you said, for the new threat. So I do wonder about, and it is a paradox, as you said, how do we enforce liberal Western values, and the paradox of enforcing our values?
Well, that's implying that Britain has liberal Western values and believes in those values, and it doesn't seem like the British people or the Americans are even believing it.
Many don't anymore. That's also a problem. All right, let's do the I then. And Keir Starmer has been called weak and indecisive. I, for one, am outraged, Lewis.
Yeah, well, this is, I mean, obviously, this is by Baroness Warzy. Keir Starmer is weak and failed to show leadership over Labour splits on Gaza ceasefire. This woman is a conservative, and she actually quit the Conservative Party 10 years ago over an earlier brutal attack that the Palestinians made on Israel, and then the fight back from the Israelis. And the main point she's making is that Keir Starmer should have done something else, but I don't know what he could do, because most of the people who support the Palestine situation are in his party. So either he goes against Gaza completely and loses 3 million votes.
Yeah, he is the party of pro-Palestinian protest, really. You know, I don't think that's overstretching it to say. And he's got a very difficult job because he wants to be Prime Minister. And Prime Minister of the UK can't be seen to be that partisan, because that essentially, in some people's eyes, makes Labour the party of anti-Semitism, because you can conflate the two quite easily, both Israel and Jewish people. People talk about, oh, well, you can't put the two together. You can. It's one of the same thing in many ways. What I would say is Starmer is trying to be all things to all men, and that never works. I do agree with him on his stance with regards to the ceasefire, because he's absolutely right. If you take that to the nth degree and you say, oh no, we should have a ceasefire, what you're essentially saying is Hamas have got away with what they wanted to get away with, and we're just going to stand back and let it happen because we're good sports here in the UK. That cannot be the case. This is now war. It's a retaliation to an invasion of a sovereign country, and I'm afraid them's the rules. Yeah, well, it's a very difficult position for Israel because they have to respond, but then the response gets them hated by people throughout the world, or some people. And like you say, it's an impossible situation for Starmer because he's losing Muslim councillors. He's had to suspend Andy MacDonald. He's got an impossible thing. As I often say, he's just trying to carry the Ming vase and not drop it before the next election. But he could drop it over this. And Wolsey's comments are a bit straight. I mean, she left because she thought they were too generous towards Netanyahu and they were sort of too pro-Israeli at the time. But now it's not quite clear what she's advocating here. Starmer's just doing what he always does. Like you say, he's trying to play it down the middle. And I was wrong about Starmer because a few months back, I thought that Rishi Sunak and the Tories had no chance in the world of winning. But I think this could be such a major split. If Starmer sides with the Gazans, the Palestinians, I think enough people in the Labour Party will be disgusted by that. Yeah, it could reduce the Tory defeat, but I still think probably Labour wins, sadly. I think because people are beginning to see that there is a choice, like you said, we're not a united. Britain is not a united country. England's not. It's not united, and I think this is if he sides with the Gazans, it's going to create a tremendous amount of dissatisfaction. Yeah, amongst some people, definitely. All right, let's do The Guardian. And rape claims against a Tory MP were not covered up, according to a Tory MP. Yes, there's no conflict of interest here whatsoever, Nick, is there? Rape claims against Tory MP were not covered up, says Deputy PM. So this is Oliver Dowden, the Deputy Prime Minister, has denied that rape allegations against a Conservative MP were covered up during his time running the party's headquarters. And of course, I don't know whether this is true or false, but what I do know is never in history have I ever seen a politician retrospectively admit to covering anything up. So that's true. So you never see it up, guys. You never see a politician, do you, just there chilling out with Parkinson, God rest his soul, you know, just there chewing the fat a year later, go, well, of course we covered stuff up, Parky. Of course we did, mate. What were we supposed to do? Yeah. What did you want us to do, mate? So, I mean, at the end of the day, it's important to point out, however, that former Tory chairman Jake Berry, who was in that post from September to October 2022, sent a letter to the police in which he revealed that a number of allegations about an MP had been made known to the party, but only limited action had been taken. That could be the slogan of our country now, limited action has been taken. Go on, Lewis. But we don't know who the MP was, and we don't know what he did. So it's a great story in many ways. This is a non-story. It's a non-story. There's a non-story, which is available at my website, lewisschaffer.co.uk. You can go to Twitter. And you can go to Twitter and you can find out where my website is. Well, unfortunately, we have to move on, Lewis. And let's do the eye. And Suella Braverman has been urged to spend some time with the homeless to see what it's really like. Lewis, would you let her in your tent? You know what? I get a lot of offers. There are a lot of ladies out there for Lewis Schaffer. I'm of a particular age. I'm like Candy. I got a little bit of hair. I'm not fat. I look amazing. Home. I have. No, the women love Lewis Schaffer. Even the younger ones do. But what she said, come see the reality of homelessness, says charities tell Braverman after rough sleeping lifestyle choices remarks, where she said that, you know, people who are down and out
choose to live in a tent, and people do have choices. But one of the women, I noticed this, one of the women who's the head of the called Homeless Link, her name is Fiona Colley, and she used to be a council person in my home borough of Southwark, and she was intimately, as far as I remember, if I'm wrong, you know, obviously I will do a full retraction, is that she was involved with the complete destruction of one of London's largest housing, one of Europe's largest housing estate, the Haygate estate. You can go to 35 Degrees website and you can find out all about it, where she destroyed thousands of housing units, making thousands of people potentially homeless. And she's saying that Ms. Braverman's comments were damaging and divisive. This is ridiculous that they have giving her the position for a homeless charity is letting Hamas handle a Jewish children's charity.
Yeah, and we should say, because it's Lewis, that may all be false. We really don't know.
Yeah, you know what? I think I remember correctly.
Okay. Well, what do you think, Paul? I mean, what Braverman seems to mean is, you know, you can't come over and just sort of utilise this country and then just stay on the street, like you can't use the benefit system. Maybe it's not the best phrasing, but people get obsessed with Suella Braverman's phrasing. I'm always more worried about the actual problem and how we tackle it. But it's a certain thing amongst the professional managerial class and the sort of Gary Linekers. He couldn't comment on October 7th, but he popped up again to have a go at Suella Braverman. And they're like, oh, she's terrible, she's inhumane. I'm more concerned about the actual problem of tents on the street and homelessness in general. But what do you think?
Well, I'm not afraid to say it. I mean, Suella Braverman is a local MP to me. She is the Fareham MP, which is not far from where I live. I've not voted Conservative in my life. I don't know who to vote for anymore, but I've never voted Conservative. One thing I would say is I like Suella Braverman. I think Suella Braverman is a very good Home Secretary. Everything about what she does is what you expect a Home Secretary to do, standing up for home. And that's what she's doing. In this case, you know, it's difficult to defend her because she calls it a lifestyle choice. Wearing Crocs is a lifestyle choice.
Yes, a
Being
bad one.
homeless, well, some say that. I adopted Crocs last year and I've never looked back, Nick.
Okay.
However, it's not a lifestyle choice. What she is saying, though, is it's all part and parcel of this immigration problem. You can just come over here, pitch a tent up somewhere in London, and all of a sudden,
yeah,
you've got a home.
We don't want San Francisco in London. I mean, Elon Musk pointed out San Francisco is a disaster. It's governed terribly. He actually made the great point that what Twitter was doing before he took over was exporting that to the whole of the world, the philosophy that caused that. So that's what we don't want, is the leftist philosophy that leads to homeless camps. But we've got to go, unfortunately. That is it for part 2. But coming up, BLM refused to stand up for Jewish people. Schools refused to teach Middle East history. And terrible people refused to help a drowning man. See you in a minute.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's only 3 people you can trust in life. Your doctor, your lawyer, and your nana.
I'm not sure.
So join me, Nana Aquare, at 3 p.m. every Saturday and Sunday, where we discuss the biggest topics of the weekend. Be ready for battle.
Could you be quiet? What is this? It's my new teeth. It's your new teeth.
I don't bite. Well, not without a good reason. Always honest, always fun. Every weekend at 3 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the Dinosaur Hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with you three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's get into it with the Telegraph. And Lord Sumption has implied the COVID inquiry is useless. Fair enough, although we do get to hear Dominic Cummings call everyone a bleeping bleep pig, Paul, which is always entertaining.
It's very entertaining, but for all the wrong reasons, as I shall say in a minute. COVID inquiry missing only useful purpose, and that's to find out whether lockdowns work. So the COVID inquiry has a built-in bias in favour of lockdowns, says a former Supreme Court judge. And I agree. I completely agree. I think we ultimately already know that lockdowns were bad. I think what we could do with this investigation in what worked and what didn't, so that we could prepare for the future. Instead, we haven't got any of that. What we've got is stuff we already know, finding out that politicians and Dominic Cummings are inept or rude or, you know, profanity is their speciality. We're not finding out anything new there. We do need to find out, because one thing that's never going to happen now is this generation, our generation, probably our children's generation too, are never, ever going to be forced to lock down again. If we've learned one thing from this inquiry so far, is they didn't have a clue. They didn't have a clue. They locked the whole country down and ruined lives without a clue.
Unfortunately, I have to question some of those assumptions, because I'd love us to never lock down again, and maybe you're right. And I'd also love people to have realised, you said that the one thing we've realised is that lockdowns are bad, but of course we haven't, because there was a Times poll that showed, especially among 15 to 24-year-olds, or something 18 to 24, something, they thought it should have been more harsh. And lots of people haven't realised lockdowns are bad, and the COVID inquiry is refusing to admit it. There's talk that we should have locked down earlier, and the only people that really get in trouble are Hancock and Cummings, because they're sort of easy targets, Hancock quite rightfully. And they don't make any progress, and that's what Lord Sumption is saying. So do you really think it's accepted that lockdowns are bad by the majority?
Well, that's an interesting question. The demographic that you spoke of then, I think it didn't impact them enough for them to know. I mean, I would say lockdown's great if you don't have to pay a mortgage. Lockdown's great if you didn't have a job to go to anyway. Lockdown's great if you just want to watch Netflix all day for 3 years. That's great for that, but it's not good for your mental health. It's not good for the economy. It's not good for the working person. I would say the generation slightly younger than that were affected hugely. My daughter, who is now 14, she had a terrible time as a result of the lockdown, not being able to go to school.
Yes, but she believes in the lockdown, as Nick says.
I don't think, well, I don't know.
Is never underestimate how stupid most people are. Not the people watching me, loving me. You're amazing. You are amazing. But people are stupid. They're stupid. And COVID is a complete lie from start to finish. And this guy Sumption, it was a hero back in the day, if you remember.
Sumption, yeah, Lord Sumption. Yeah. He was. He spoke out against it. And he's saying this is just focusing on trivia. I think many people agree. You said that. This inquiry is not getting to the heart of it. We're not asking the serious questions. And I should just say, for balance, some people think COVID was not whatever you just said. Yeah. You say whatever word you said.
It's not a thing.
Not a thing. Some people think it is a thing.
I mean, it's a little bit of a thing, but it's not a thing the way they made it a thing. And people are getting COVID now. I'm getting 3 or 4 people have said, oh, I've got COVID. He was diagnosed. Why would you even get tested?
Right.
You got to be insane to
We all have it right now in this room.
Yeah.
So
we do now.
Let's do the Telegraph. And Black Lives Matter activists are failing to speak out about anti-Semitism. Who'd have thought it, Paul?
Who would have thunk it? Yeah, Black Lives Matter activists are failing to speak out about anti-Semitism. anti-Semitism, says our friend Dowden again. No poo Sherlock. I mean, BLM aren't interested in social justice for a start. So Deputy PM has said he is disappointed that BLM activists are not showing the same moral indignation that they did after the death of George Floyd. And of course they're not. They're not interested in justice of any kind. They're not interested in getting to the basis of absolutely anything. They're not interested in protecting anyone other than themselves and their own interests. That's been proven time and time again. And I hate to say this, but I believe BLM has turned out to be a scam. I believe in it, and it's really
by large mansions.
Yeah, exactly. But the reason I say I hate to say this because we all know good-meaning, well-meaning people who really thought this was a power for good, and they just went along for the ride, and they just got completely and utterly scammed.
Hoodwinked. That was always naive. I never posted the black square. I could always see what Black Lives Matter were, and of course they're not going to support Israel or care about anti-Semitism. I mean, Patrice Cullors, 2015, she's the founder of Black Lives Matter. She said that we need to end the imperialist project called Israel. So they're the most vehemently anti-Israel people you can get. We saw they posted certain chapters of them posted the paraglider picture on Twitter immediately after the disgusting Hamas attacks. So they're appalling people. And by the way, one further point to get myself in trouble: when Dowden says the clarity after the George Floyd death. That's just the point the right and no one should really concede, because it's come out now in a case that the autopsy shows there was not pressure on his neck. He didn't die from that. Candace Owens has showed it in a film, so he probably wasn't even murdered anyway. So anyway,
well, politics makes strange bedfellows. That's that saying. And BLM is part of Team World, and Team World supports the Palestinian Arab Muslim side because they are against ethno-states. And imperialism. They're against it. They're against America and they're against Britain.
OK, well, that's pretty conclusive. Let's have a look at the next story, which is... And let me just get it in a second, because I haven't gone down. Oh, The Guardian. And 250,000 women have left their jobs to return to motherhood. Finally, some good news, Paul. Or is it?
Yes, and double yes. So motherhood penalty has driven 250,000 women out of jobs. So... there are mothers with young children that have left jobs because of difficulties with balancing work and childcare, according to a report by an equal rights charity. And here's the thing. Nature and capitalism don't mix particularly well. I think the solution to this isn't to put pressures on employers and businesses to say to pay more or to do things differently. I think we need to look at this from a completely different perspective and make it acceptable once again that women or whoever the main carer at home is, it can be at home and isn't forced to work. Because now we've got a society where everybody needs to work just to survive. You know, for thousands and thousands and thousands of generations, we had one parent that would work and one parent that would nurture. And there's a good reason for that. It's biology. And the reason that we're not seeing that right now is because we're seeing the eradication of biology. We're seeing the eradication of science.
OK, Lewis?
I mean, this story is actually good news. 250,000 women have chosen to stay home and look after their children and not to buy into this whole working thing. Work is horrible. Men, we have to do it. We have to do it because who would love Paul if he did not have a job? Look at this guy. Who would want to have sex with this guy if he didn't have a job and brought home some money? He wouldn't. We have to work.
All right. All right. Well, I'm not going to top that. So let's do this other one in The Guardian. And schools are refusing to teach the history of Israel and Palestine in case they're accused of bias. You know what they say? Those that fail to learn from history avoid getting cancelled, Lewis.
That's it. Let me think about that. I don't even understand what that means. But it's schools in England, according to The Guardian, blocked lessons on Middle East over fears of bias claims. And it says there's only 2% of the older kids are learning about the Middle East. And I can understand why, because they are afraid of people making anti-Semitic comments, because there are very few Jews. People don't understand how few Jews there are in the world. They're just a tiny number. There's 15 million all over the world. Anyway,
some have massive personalities,
and some make a lot of noise, which make people hate it. Anyway, so because they don't know what to teach, because this country is divided into basically two countries. One country is pro-Palestine, and the other country is pro-Britain.
But what we need, of course, is more education. I mean, they're saying a few things. They're saying that they'll lead to conflict in the classes. They're saying that it's... some people think Muslims will make anti-Semitic comments in the classes, which is a teacher calls unfair, dangerous and insulting. That may well actually happen as well, if we're honest. But Paul, this can't be the answer, because people need... I know we're in this culture of cancel culture and woke intimidation, but kids need to learn about this, because we're coming out with this very sort of simplistic narrative.
Yeah, you at some point, our collective society's got to make a choice between over-progressivism, i.e. wokeism, and the truth. Because inherent within the truth are the facts of the past. And, of course, every generation seems to make the same mistakes. But we can learn from these lessons. There are lessons to be learned on both sides. Why are we protecting children from this? Because ultimately, at the end of the day, we're not protecting children here, actually. What we're protecting here is teachers. And I don't blame the teachers either. It's not like the teachers are deliberately trying to avoid this, although they are. But the reason they are is because they know that society, an ultra-progressive society, will frown upon them unless they come down on one side.
Because this country hasn't planted its flag in the ground, and so there's no fixed position. So how can you teach something if you don't even know what you believe?
That's a good point, actually. In 1 minute, let's just do this one. The Telegraph and a crowd of people took selfies in front of a drowning man instead of helping him. With that level of narcissism, it sounds like they're ready to enter showbiz, Lewis.
Yeah, well, take pictures of me. I mean, that's all I want. All I want is for someone to pay attention. I'm willing to risk people hating me on this fakakta program. You know.
Should we say what the story is?
What the story is: crowds watch man nearly drown with "quote unquote" no one coming to help. And this is up there in York, which is a beautiful city, and the River Ouse. I think I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Yeah.
River Ouse, and the guy jumped in, and there were 2 life rings, and nobody threw a life ring, and they just like watched the guy possibly drown because it's cold water up there.
Yeah, luckily he didn't, but completely insane. Paul, in 15 seconds, what do you think?
This is all to do with social media. I mean, you can't get the likes if you help and become part of the drowning situation. You can only get the likes if you video it and stand back.
Do you know what I think it is? It's the death of love. That is it for part 3. But coming up in the final section, Elon Musk's rebellious AI, buff billionaires, and Jordan Peterson. See you in a minute.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best.
Bellissima.
You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these 3.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christys, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. Join me, Mark Dolan, Fridays and Saturdays from 9, Sundays from 10. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's have a look at The Guardian. And Elon Musk has invented an AI with a rebellious streak. I can't see that going wrong in any way, Paul.
Well,
rebellious AI.
I mean, finally, we do have an AI story that's of some interest, or is interest to me, shall I say. I'm not saying that all AI stories are uninteresting. I know they are for some people.
Except this one.
Elon Musk unveils Grok, an AI chatbot with a rebellious streak. So Grok, and I was unaware of this, is a verb coined by American science fiction writer Robert A. Heinlein, according to the Collins Dictionary. It means understand thoroughly and intuitively. So Elon Musk has unveiled Grok, an artificial intelligence chatbot, and one thing it has different to the other chatbots is access to X. So it can instantly access all the information that's available on X, all the tweets, and all that good stuff. It's designed to answer questions with a bit of wit and a rebellious streak. So it says here, warning, please don't use if you hate humour. So, I mean, I think that maybe writes off, at the moment, about 75% of the global population, I think.
And it is quite funny, you know, it says, how do we make cocaine? It says, obtain a chemistry degree, set up a clandestine laboratory in a remote location, then it says, I'm only joking. Yeah. It's basically like Elon Musk's brain exported and is going to take over the world. And what he's done, Lewis, which is quite funny, is he said AI is one of the biggest threats to humanity. Then, this is my take, he realised everyone else was going to just carry on making it anyway. He's like, well, I may as well make a funny one then that's like me.
Yeah, because people are interested in that guy. At the end of the day, he's going to be the most famous person in the world when Donald Trump, you know, croaks. And, I mean, a lot of people, because AI is useful, but my calendar is not based on AI.
You got the calendar on
my calendar is not, and it's the thing, because it looks like this is not me, this is created by AI, but no, this is how...
Actually, you're wearing the same outfit as Steve Jobs, ironically.
Yeah,
so
this is how great I look. And so if you need a calendar to, let's say, do, what's the holiday that we're in?
We're not in a holiday.
The fireworks thing.
Yeah, Guy Fawkes.
Guy Fawkes. You can get my calendar.
Okay.
Go to my website and buy my calendar.
I mean, Andrew wouldn't let him get away with this, but I'm too nice. But basically, we've covered this story, but it's better than woke AI. Elon Musk didn't like open source. He didn't like woke AI, so he invented Grok. It's going to be Grok versus woke AI, a kind of Godzilla battle for the future. That's what I think.
He's a clever man, a scientist for the people, Musk. I always say that. He's an excellent combination of wit, intelligence and lad.
Much like Nick Dixon.
But can I add one point?
Yes.
You're totally spot on.
Thank you.
Because he's inherently, let's say, not Team World, because he's conservative, and he's doing that with Twitter, and he's doing that with his AI.
With Grok.
Yeah.
We're Team Grok here. Let's do The Guardian with a story about the secret of eternal youth. Is it eating meat, Lewis?
It is eating meat. End of. We don't need to discuss it anymore.
Okay,
but no, The Guardian does this whole big spiel. British biotech races U.S. buff billionaires for secret of eternal youth. And that's just basically a clickbait title to put a picture of a steroided, hyper-worked out Bezos with his girlfriend who's had more plastic surgery than whatever.
Even got a whatever.
Fail on the analogy.
Yeah, so I don't know if that's true. We don't know if that's true.
No,
but the truth is they're working on genetic stuff in America and here. They're working on all sorts of different things.
Okay, Paul, do you want to give us some of the facts of the story just for lols?
The facts is there is no facts. They're saying that America has rich people who put a lot more money into this stuff.
But they looked at cyclists, and it's to do with the thymus gland. It normally shrinks in older people, but not in cyclists.
But that's after the fact. I forget what that kind of research is. They haven't tracked. They've done no random control trials. They just see people who work out, and they say, what are people who work out? How do they look a bit different? It doesn't say whether they're going to live longer. Exercise is bad for you.
And for balance, exercise is good for you.
No,
anything,
it is.
Paul, I don't think Liz is actually going to let you speak on this one, so I might just move on.
No,
let's move on.
No,
Okay,
no, I'm not cutting you.
No, you won't cut me off. It's just okay. So it says in here, but this ruins a lot of my theories actually, because it says in here, oh, there's nothing you can do about that. It's just part of ageing, and they're talking about putting on weight. So I've just been relying on that. I'm at 44 this month, and I'm thinking because a lot of people have relied on the fact that as you get older, you do put on weight.
And that's not true now.
And they're saying it's not true.
Exactly. Which is good news actually. But let's do the Telegraph then with a story about the recent ARC conference, Paul. Which
yes, some of the best people I know went there.
Thank you.
Baroness Stroud, who, by the way, is a Tory peer for those who are unaware, says Jordan Peterson, who I think's in the room actually, and I believe Jordan Peterson, I believe.
Is he in the room?
Yeah, he's just coming in and out. And I believe, so she's saying that Jordan Peterson and her believe that we can be part of building something better. So this is the Tory pair, and her saying her party, and I totally agree with this, her party, the Conservative Party, has done nothing to change the left-wing narrative of victimhood and decline. And it hasn't, which is why we have left millions and millions of voters politically homeless. And I think this is fantastic stuff, because it's about time the centre-right took a grip of this situation.
Well, I went to ARC and I interviewed Dave Rubin, which was good, and I saw Dr. Peterson being moved by... I'm so moved by my own speeches. It was incredible. And there were lots of interesting people there, Eric Weinstein, Brett Weinstein, loads of people, and it is good. It's the Alliance for Responsible Citizenship, so I like the idea they're trying to form an alliance against Team World, against the woke side, who are definitely good at allying with each other. Some criticism of it for balance, where some people said it was too American, some people said there wasn't a clear direction. A lot of people said the networking was better than the speeches, which is fine. It's probably the case with a lot of conferences. Yeah. So it's like, what do we do? It's trying to come up with another coherent narrative to counter wokeness. But what do you think?
I agree with you. It's a team UK. It's a team localism. I mean, the things that they're fighting for is faith and family, classical inheritance that underpins Western values. But this Baroness Philippa Stroud, I don't know anything about her, but she says different ways of getting to net zero. And that's like, she went off the path there.
Yeah. That's
great,
yes.
Net zero is so
I know. On environment, they might be a bit off. Anyway, the whole conference ended with some beautiful music and then a big close-up of Jordan Peterson crying, which was perfect. Let's do the Telegraph. New York is introducing an app that can only be described as a kind of grinder for rats, Lewis.
Yeah, New York subway passengers can now check a station's rat levels on a tracking app. Yeah, there's New York City subway system's got an app. It's called Track. Whatever, it's called Transit if you're there, and it tells you where have rats been spotted in the New York City subway. And I lived in Manhattan for like 20 years. I lived in New York my entire, up until the time I moved here, and my life was ruined. Yeah. But I'm telling you, there are rats everywhere in New York. Maybe there are rats in this city, but you don't see them like you do.
Why are you pointing at me?
And by the way, it's got to the point where New York even has a rat czar, which I thought was...
A rat czar?
I thought it was Splinter. Remember him? The Turtles? To me, he was the rat czar. I mean, in 15 seconds again, Paul, I've done this to you before. 15 seconds, what do you think about the rats here?
Well, it says here that the rats are a symptom of systematic issues, including sanitation, yes. Health, yes. Housing, yes. Economic justice? I don't think so.
I saw that. I was like, when you said that, I was like, I stopped listening because that's complete nonsense. Yeah. All right, great show, but it's nearly over, so let's take another quick look at Monday's front pages. So, the Daily Mail has pressure on Tories over serial rapist cover-up. The Telegraph, Met chief urged to ban armistice protest. The Express, Brexit trade freedom boost for UK economy. The Guardian has Israeli strikes on Gaza intensify as violence on Lebanon border flares. The UK's National Security Council not prepared for heightened terror threat. The Daily Star, finally, here we blow again, and those were your front pages. That is it for tonight's show, sadly. Thanks to Paul and Lewis. Headliners is back tomorrow at 11 p.m. And if you're watching at 5 a.m, then stay tuned for breakfast. But for now, it's good night, good morning, and God bless.
Who is it? We're here for the show.
More energy this time!
Welcome to the dinosaur hour. I was married to a therapist.
And you survived?
I thought we were getting Hugh Laurie. Second best. You interviewed Saddam Hussein. What's that like?
I was terrified. I'm playing strip poker with these three.
Oh! No, thank you.
My CDs need to be put in alphabetical order.
Are you going to be problematic again?
The Dinosaur Hour. Sundays at 9 on GB News.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
People in Britain, they love free speech, but they also love fair play.
I don't care if I'm speaking somebody from a trade union, from the Labour Party, somebody from the SNP. And I think the viewers like to see that actually we can challenge one another, but in a positive way.
We think we ask the questions that people want to ask, and often we ask the questions that we wanted to ask in Parliament but never got the chance to ask.
So join us every Saturday, 10 a.m. till noon on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the radio player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good evening, I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Our top story tonight, Boris Johnson has urged Israel's allies to stay the course in their support for Israel in its war against Hamas. The former Prime Minister toured some of the communities attacked by terrorists on the 7th of October. In an exclusive interview with our security editor Mark White, he said he was horrified by what he saw and called on the international community to remember those events.
Look at what happened. Remember, this was sadism. This was an orgy of brutality and torture against innocent people. People were chased around the rooms in their houses and shot. Now, there's a difference between that and what the Israeli soldiers are now trying to do in Gaza. So your point, Mark, about what the international community needs to remember is the difference between what Israel experienced, the terrorist attack, and what they're trying to do now. What they're trying to do now is make sure that never happens again.
And you can see more of that exclusive interview with Boris Johnson tomorrow from breakfast at 6 and throughout the day on GB News.